Hey everyone, I'm JD. I'm a PM at Splunk AI. And today, through my presentation, I want to try and convince you all of just one thing, really, which is that the most valuable thing you're going to build this year is going to be MCP tools. And I want to show you that Splunk is here to help carry a lot of the heavy weight. So let's get started. About 3 years ago, AI assistants were introduced to us, right? They were simple. We would ask questions and they would respond. Today, they've evolved where AI plans, it can call tools, and can complete tasks and agentic workflows end to end for us. In the future, we strongly believe that agents will collaborate with other agents across systems, vendors, and even your customer stacks, right? What this means for every app, including yours, is that either they're reachable by an agent or they completely become invisible in the Internet of Agents era. And this is not just us saying it. The market's already decided this for us, right? 40 plus agent frameworks already speak MCP. Leading providers like Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini are part of this, right? So the protocol war is really over. MCP is won, and we sort of know it. Our customers have already started to ask us where our MCP tools are. So the question no longer is about, how about when are we going to build MCP tools really, right? It's about how we're going to do it. And that brings us to a fork in the road. One path is where you can build your own MCP server. You're going to have to own and maintain authentication. You're going to have to own and maintain rate limiting. You're going to have to own and maintain your own tool registry and discovery process. You're going to have to own and maintain your own tool collisions. And you're going to have to maintain your own observability dashboards, right? And a lot of other things that could take me all of this presentation. This could take you about 2 quarters worth of work just to get in front of your customers. The other path that you have is to ship through Splunk's MCP platform, where all you need to own and maintain is your app's MCP tools. This could take you as less as 2 weeks or even lesser, right? So I'm here today to convince all of you to choose the right path, right? Which is to ship through Splunk's MCP platform. Let me show you what's already on Splunk's MCP platform. Splunk's MCP server is already there, and a lot of your customer stacks are running, right? It's governed, right? Which means it's RBAC enforced. It is Splunk native. So searches, indexes, all of these functionalities are exposed as MCP tools. It's AI native, which means a lot of the Splunk's AI capabilities like SPL Assistant, which helps with generation, optimization, and explanation of SPLs is already there. This is the bottom line that you're going to work with, right? Now, let me show you what all we've done on our Splunk's platform, right? The first thing is we've already shipped OAuth 2.1. What this means is that your customer is going to sign in once and they will have access to all of the MCP tools you will expose there. We have rate limiting shipped, which means your customer admins can set global and per tool rate limits. Role-based rate limiting is also going to be coming soon. We have tool collision checks in there, which means your customer's client will never be confused between two tools because they'll never be similar, right? Admin dashboards coming later next month, which means your customer admins will be able to understand exactly how your MCP tools are being used, what is the failure rate, what is the latency rate, right? I would like you all to take about 10 seconds really, because all of this we ship once and it's accessible to all of you. Versus if you were to do it on your own, it would take each one of you about 2 quarters worth of work to really get this. So, how does this all fit together, right? We expect your customers to be, accessing MCP through their clients, could be Claude, could be Cursor, could be the custom agents, and that will speak to the MCP, to the Splunk's MCP server, one layer where there's already discovery process built in, which means your tools can be discovered. There's authentication, as I mentioned. RBAC and monitoring are also part of it. Now, through this one layer, they'll be able to access Splunk's core tool like search, indexes, AI assistant functionalities. And side by side, they'll be able to access your app's functionalities exposed as MCP tools. So I really believe that Splunk's experience that you've already been experiencing over the past decade of building your apps and having them side by side to Splunk's app, similarly will be able to have your apps functionalities as MCP tools side by side to Splunk's MCP tool, right? So one registry, one authentication, one trust layer, all built in to Splunk's MCP platform, and all of that exposed to Splunk's MCP server. I hope today I've been able to convince you all to really go out there and pick one capability in your app that you can expose as MCP tool and ship it to Splunk's MCP platform. Thank you all for listening to me. Now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Michael, who's going to show you how easy it is to build an MCP tool through Splunk.
All right, hello everyone. Let me get this going. And here we go. All right, so going to talk with the development side of apps with MCP tools. And first off, got our forward-looking statements, and then quick introduction of myself. So I'm Michael Semney. I'm the engineering product manager for the app development platforms. That includes everything from our SDKs to our endpoints to pretty much everything you all touch as developers. So from there, I want to talk about our recent addition to our endpoints, which is our MCP tools from apps. So, kind of getting into the history of this, enterprise AI adoption requires integration with existing deterministic tools. We've got all our deterministic tools that we've built over decades now, and what's the point of this? Well, most of our customers out there, and this is not just Cisco, but enterprises wide, are not finding the ROI on their AI investments to date. 55% of our customers, this is from Cisco, say that the most important thing that AI Canvas can provide is cross-context correlation, which means integrating all these tools together. And then last but not least, we've been building apps for 13 years now. It makes sense to expose those tools or those apps as tools so that AI can actually leverage them. And this is kind of why, if you were an AI and you were to use tools like ServiceNow, SAP, or, which just reinvent the calculator, of course you'd use the calculator. You'd use those tools, That's why the latest breakthrough is tool use. Tools are designed to be explicit. We need to bridge this gap between all our deterministic software that we've built for years and AI so that we can actually combine them well. And so you've kind of seen this already, but this is actually how it's all going to come together. And we've talked about the features and everything of the MCP server. Thank you, JD. But I want to, kind of just poke at this a little bit more. Things are literally going to be side by side, and I'll show you that a little bit later when you actually expose your tools through our MCP server. So they're really all on the same level here, and you can take a look, at this kind of architecture. That's our goal. We want you to be the equivalent of our first-party tools, just so that everyone can see your tools the same way they see the ones that we built. So why do this? And this is the nutshell of it. This is the real core of it. Apps are the way Splunk insights are packaged for the customer. You all know this, but MCP allows apps to share those insights easily with LLMs for analysis and action. LLMs can't really leverage customer endpoints and searches easily without these tools. And that's what we're actually allowing people to do, our developers, you all, to do, is actually to expose those insights that you packaged up in your apps, and that functionality that you packaged up in your apps, to LLMs. So who will use this? Well, we expect nearly every app developer can benefit from adding tools. So give you a few examples here. Splunk app for AWS security dashboards can be accessed by an LLM and uses the unauthorized action search to start remediation for the issues that it finds there. It used to be that a person would have to do this by hand, pop open the dashboard app and take a look at what's in there and then say, oh, well, these are my issues. How about I go take care of these and do it by hand? We can expose that to an LLM through an MCP tool and let the LLM start that remediation rather than have to do it by hand. Cisco Security Cloud shares its health check services or searches with an LLM to monitor network security and availability to respond to failed devices. Man, doesn't that sound nice? We now have an LLM that is able to monitor your network and say, oh, this switch has failed. Can we build a route around it? And last but not least, and this was near and dear to my heart, world map refresh and player location tracking made available to LLMs from within the Splunk app for Minecraft to create a mining and construction strategy. Sorry, that's a personal plug for me. Okay, so how does it work? Well, over on the left is your app. So there's two new files that you can package up in apps. One is the tools.conf, and one is the tool input payload signatures.json. Long name, still pretty simple. The tools.conf is a conf file that literally just defines these are the tools that I'm going to expose. There's two things that you can expose, saved searches and custom REST endpoints. So it literally just grabs the stuff from saved searches and REST map. You specify which ones you want to expose, and it's pretty straightforward. I'll show you in just a second. The tool input payload signatures is the definition of signatures for your REST endpoints. And this is there so that when an LLM accesses your tools, it knows what to pass along through the tool in order to actually call it appropriately. We could let the LLM guess as to what the tool needs, but we found that's pretty hit and miss. So this is a little bit better way to go about it. Well, those files then get consumed into App Manager when you install your app. So, and App Manager grabs that conf file and the payload signatures and calls into a tool registration API in the Splunk MCP server. From there, the Splunk MCP server exposes the tools and calls back into your REST endpoint and calls to your saved searches as an export in order to actually execute the tools. If it seems, not overly complicated, that's exactly it. We tried to do the heavy lifting so that this is easy to do because we want you all to do it. So to get into exactly how easy this is, there you go. That's the conf, one REST endpoint and one saved search. So the first one is, you can see how it's called. You say REST map, and then you specify the tool name. Second one's very similar. It's saved searches, and you specify the tool name. For both of them, you specify either an endpoint name or a search, and then the method to access it. And you can specify custom headers for the REST endpoint if you want to. Both of them have descriptions and tags, and I want to harp on this because it's actually critical. Good descriptions and good tags are what will get your tools picked up by an LLM. You need to be thoughtful about these. Don't just put anything down. Be descriptive with your description and be precise. Likewise with your tags. You want to be very clear about what your tags are, and you don't want too many, and you don't want too few. My experience today is somewhere between 3 and 5 tags is about right, and a single descriptive sentence is exactly what you want as far as your description is concerned. But these are even more important than the name of your tool, so make sure you are thoughtful about these. And this is that tool input payload signature.json. You take a look at it, and it is basically a description of the parameters that get passed into the REST endpoint so that you can actually say to the LLM, this is what you need to provide me in order to actually execute this tool appropriately. So every single parameter has a description, some examples, typing, so that the LLM knows how to use it well. It's pretty straightforward, as you can see here, just the properties around the REST endpoint with each individual item. And there is a little bit of validation that is done on the back end in case you want to specify, this is supposed to be this, and if it doesn't match the pattern or it doesn't match the type, we can call back to you and say, this is what's what. And that's it. That's what we've got. That is really how you define a tool. So I'm going to walk you through it as an example real quickly. And I'm actually going to use these two files to show you how they work. So hopping out. There we go. So if we take a look at our apps here, I have two apps that have tools configured. One is the Minecraft app, and the other is the Splunk app for AWS security. And they will, if I dig in, actually show up under the objects, but I'm going to go the easy way and hop into the MCP server so that I can show you right alongside all of the built-in tools, we now have our app tools. I have them enabled here, but one thing that I do want to call out from this screen, your tools will be disabled by default. Any app that installs tools, they're disabled by default, so you have to come in here and enable them. We wanted to do that for security reasons, so that if somehow a rogue app does get installed, or an app that the admin doesn't entirely understand gets installed, they aren't in trouble right off the bat. So if you install your app and don't see your tools immediately, hop on in here, enable your tools, you'll see them that way. From here, you can actually see all of the descriptions and everything that we have provided in our tools, so that you and any admin installing your app knows exactly what's in there. From there, grab your URL from the MCP server, create your token, open up Claude, and let's see what Claude has to say. Claude's ruminating on it. There we are. And through here, well, it didn't give me all of them all at once, but it did call out the Minecraft app, and let's get specific here. There we are. All right. And it gives me the whole thing there. So I'm going to say Claude needs his coffee this morning. All right. If Claude takes too much longer, I'm going to switch over to Gemma. All right. Claude's usually a little quicker than that, but we'll go ahead and grab Google. And the nice thing about it here is I can actually see, whoops, the MCP tools are all exposed. I can say, sometimes running a local LLM works a little bit better. There we go. And that's how you can actually set up your tools. Now, these are basic examples, as you can probably imagine. But from here, the sky's the limit. And the things that we are considering internally are pretty cool. So keep an eye out for Cisco Live and Conf coming up. And also, more importantly, I'm excited to see what you all build. Turning this over to our developer community, I can only imagine where you're going to go with this. And so from there, I'd love to open it up for any questions. Okay, let's see what we got in chat. Okay.
I can help read out the questions, Michael.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Yeah, okay. So we have, How is Splunk configured to an MCP server? Do we have a pre-built Splunk skill?
So it's kind of, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's how do we actually configure an MCP server on top of Splunk? That's how that sounds to me. And it's actually pretty straightforward. It is basically just an app that you install. And then from that app, there are two things that you need. One is it will give you a URL to connect to the MCP server, which is usually punched into an mcp.json, or some agents actually have a UI that is configurable so that you can pop it in there. But the other part is that you will need either OAuth or a token in order to actually leverage the MCP server. So the important thing there is know what authentication method you're using, but then you've got the URL that you can go ahead and grab from the MCP app itself after you install it in order to leverage it.
Awesome. There is one question that came before. If we want to use MCP for autonomous threat hunts, for example, how can this work with the existing limits, like max runtime of 1 minute for searches?
Got it. So in terms of how those limits are configured through MCP, the MCP server doesn't actually have anything directly to do with the searches. It actually calls into the APIs on the back end. So whatever limits you configure and however you want to manage those, that is what will be exposed through the MCP server. There are some fixed limits in the MCP server. For instance, there is a maximum of, I think it's 50,000 rows from a search from the MCP server, and that is part of the MCP server. So there's no paginating or anything like that of searches through the MCP server yet.
Okay, next question. Are the LLMs sandboxed? I would be concerned about HIPAA and other regulations regarding newly developing governance.
Gotcha. So these are just the MCP tools. These are not directly part of an LLM. So these are exposed to LLMs that LLMs can use. And so an LLM can actually connect to these. The MCP is the protocol that is defined for LLMs to connect to deterministic systems. So the LLM is not managed here. The LLM would be managed on the other end. So however you choose to configure Splunk to manage your, we'll say HIPAA data, and however you choose to configure your LLM, whether it's an internal one or Claude or anything like else to manage that data, that is where you actually manage it. You don't manage it at the MCP server, just like you wouldn't manage it at a REST API. Whatever data gets passed through that, that's the interface. So you need to manage it on either side of that interface.
Cool, cool. Where are you applying the .conf, I believe, that file? Is this going to be my app that I will deploy in the stack on the search head / indexers if I'm hosted in cloud?
Yes, yes. So these tools are exposed through the MCP server on the search head. So that when you install the app, that is where when you install the MCP server app, that is where it is actually installed. And these tools are exposed from there.
Sounds good. Those tags are not great for actual data governance. Can we implement data governance, cataloging, and terminology on all knowledge objects instead?
Okay. That's something that I might actually want to take offline to understand a little bit more. So what I'd ask is go ahead and reach out to me in the community Slack. And if I could get a little bit more of the use case that you're describing there, that might help me understand what exactly your needs are and what's not there.
Cool. So Kyle, please reach out to Michael and we will work on your use case. Okay. Does Splunk MCP support SSE?
JD, do you know that one? I don't actually have the answer to that one.
I don't think so, but again, I can cross check. Renata, if you just, I guess, want to let Joshua know to reach out, and I
Yeah.
can connect with Michael and then respond to that. I don't believe so.
Okay, Joshua, please reach out to Michael and JD on the external Slack. That's splk.it/Slack, or reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'm happy to connect you. All right. How can I get the tools installed? I do not have it under my Splunk MCP app.
So the tools that I exposed are from apps that I have written. So the Minecraft app is actually the one exposing those tools. So if you want additional tools, that's what we're here to say. Go build them. You know, we want everybody building their own tools for their own use. So those ones that I shared from the Minecraft app and from the Splunk app for AWS security, those are ones that I have added into those apps so that they can be shared here. It's worth noting that neither are public yet. We've not actually turned them loose yet, but that's how you do it. So add them into an app and expose whatever functionality you like.
Okay. Can you show your Claude connector settings? Maybe not.
Oh, hold on. I can actually do that.
Okay.
Let me give you a and there we are. So that is what the JSON actually looks like. So, and you can actually grab this from the MCP server as well. I have redacted my token.
All right. Is this stdio or on public endpoint?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I think this was a contextual question with something that you were presenting at 10:17. So Joshua, please reach out to Michael. I think this will need some context.
Okay.
Moving on to next one. How Splunk is configured to MCP server? Do we have a pre-built Splunk skill?
Actually, I can't answer that previous question.
Okay.
So that previous question, this is actually done over HTTP, not over STDIO. So the MCP server is HTTP only. The Splunk MCP server is HTTP only. And so that is done over HTTP. The connection between the MCP server and your REST endpoints, that is done over HTTP as well, because the MCP server is basically doing REST calls on the backend. So both of those are HTTP. The Splunk MCP server is not available over STDIO, but later today I will actually be talking about agents on the Splunk platform, and there is an STDIO local MCP server there if that's something that you're looking for.
Cool. If you could show how the permission setup for the app, is it what you're showing right now?
The permission setup for the app. So there is nothing special about the permissions for the app. So and I'll hide this for the moment. There's nothing special about the permissions for the app. And I'm not sure what else we need to know. There are two things that are necessary to actually execute the tools from the app that I can speak to. And that is that the user accessing the tools needs to be part of the MCP tool users group and have that capability. And the other part is that the app tools actually need to be enabled. So those are the two things that I can think of on that front in terms of permissions.
All right, we have time for one more question, and I promise I'm going to get all of the other questions answered over Slack, and I'll keep a record. Okay, do we have any official skills that we can use for app or add-on development for Splunk?
That's a good question. The most interesting one that we have right now is the app inspect tools that Dan was talking about. It's actually extremely useful to check your app against. So I would recommend taking a look at that because I have found that if you just let app inspect basically run while you're coding, it will tell you, hey, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, you need to fix this.
All right.
It's pretty cool.
I believe that. All right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. It's time for our next session. on Agent Builder. Please use the agenda icon that you will see on the right side of your screen to leave this one and join the next one. Thank you so much. And I promise I'll get all of your questions answered over Slack.
All right. Thanks much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Just in case you didn't catch what I said earlier, please click on that agenda icon that you'll be seeing on the right side of your screen to leave this session and join the next one, which will be on AI Agent Builder. All right, I'm going to leave as well.